Joining me now, we've got Francisco Bido, who is the FM Investments Senior Vice President and Senior Portfolio Manager. I would love to know what areas you're really focused on with this backdrop and this setup as we head into the final trading weeks of the year.
Well, good morning. Thanks for having me. Yes, I am focused basically on information technology. That is my favorite sector going into 2025. And in second place, I would say very selected retail and consumer discretionary. In the IT space, companies like AMD, NVIDIA, Palantir, FSLR, I think there's all good, solid picks going forward. And in the retail space, I believe that consumers are out there, they're spending money for the holidays and so on. And the Burlington Coat Factory, BURL, is one of my top picks there.
And so all of these things in mind, is there one theme that you believe that we've seen play out in 2024 that could also permeate over into 2025?
Oh, it's definitely artificial intelligence, and continued growth in data centers. This is just the beginning of a long-term ramp up. So, it's going to carry into 2025, 26, and God knows when, I expect it to go on strong forever and then get into a cycle mode. By that, I mean that once you buy your chips and so on, 5 years from now, you're going to buy new chips to do even better. So, you have an updated PC cycle, so to speak.
So with that in mind, and I think you're kind of alluding to something that a lot of analysts have been trying to wrap their minds around, which is a chip replenishment rate, how quickly the burn off of chips would take place and thus require them to be replenished or replaced within some of the data centers as well here, and the pricing at which that would be anticipated to take place. So as you're kind of looking across your own portfolio, and even if that is the theme that is perhaps the most prevailing that could permeate over into 2025, what's your assessment of how companies would go about navigating the pricing landscape and make sure that investors are clearly not grappling with, but understanding that story?
Right. I think the story, the AI story, will be self-explanatory going forward. It's a little bit tricky to wrap your head around, like you mentioned. And I believe, and I've read some things that are people wanting it to see the benefits tomorrow, from an investment they made yesterday and so on. So they got to be a little bit more patient, but AI is a transformative technology. It's not just one thing, right? And to put it in simple terms, we're talking about learning, artificial learning. We're talking about speech recognition, sound recognition, vision. So if you think about all those things where they can put to good use, including image processing, let me give you an example just to make it my point here. If you have an empty lot sitting around the corner, and all of a sudden you can get this software and it has AI and it has all the rules and regulations in a module for the county, all of a sudden you can design a building and 10 or 20 different designs on that lot, all with the plumbing, the electrical, pretty much like this, because they're images at the end of the day following certain constraints. So that's an example how AI can really transform many different industries. It could be health, care, insurance, and so on. So I think this is just the beginning of it, and it's really hard for a lot of people to get their hands about where the future is. The future's never that easy to predict.
Certainly.
So, yeah.
I want to come back to one of the other themes that you mentioned as well here, and you talked about the consumer. I wonder what you're noticing among the consumer this holiday season and what that kind of spells out compared up against the resiliency picture that we've heard and witnessed out in some of the economic data readings as well.
Well, that's all good for now. Let's put it that way. Come 2025, there's talk about tariffs and things of that nature, and I am concerned about that. I think at the end of the day, the consumer is the one that suffers from those things. Right now, they're outspending, and they're looking for value stocks. For value in general. So that's why, like, for example, Burlington Coat Factory, they get other people's excess inventory. And this is what probably going to end up in 2025 with a lot of excess inventory as companies prepare for tariffs maybe and just overstock. They buy too much of things because it's hard to predict and it brings in volatility. So we'll see how that goes. And I think consumers will be impacted by that. So that's one of the risks going into 2025, and I'll certainly keep my eye on that one.
And so just lastly, while we have you here, we typically would have been, for much of this year, talking about the risk that the Fed has within this broader kind of portfolio makeup that you've been laying out. But it seems like the Fed's on the back burner now, and it's all focused on what you just mentioned a moment ago in the incoming administration, the risk of potential tariffs, and the unknown there. How would you be structuring your portfolio to outlast any of those potential threats?
No, that's a good question. So the way that we pick our stocks in our portfolio is we use a house-grown investment process, which we call quant active, which is basically a quantitative layer that looks at the hard numbers regardless of emotions, and then it follows it up by me. So we take a hard look at things and look where the market is at. But in general, what we're looking for is stocks that have accelerating earnings and revenues. No matter who's in government, you want stocks that are growing and that are generating legitimate profits, organically. For that reason, a lot of these semiconductor companies pop up. They just show up in our processes, and that's why the process is dictating to us that going into 2025, it's in great shape. It's because of that. The fundamentals are strong, and the demand is there. So if you get into more speculative sectors like consumer discretionary, then you're going to have some bumps because of the tariffs and so on. But everybody's going to need technology going forward.
Francisco, thanks so much for taking the time here with us today. Appreciate it.
Thank you.